Good morning. Welcome. As you are welcome here. Visitor, friend, or longtime member, you are welcome here. With little children or your partner or alone, we joyfully welcome you here. You are welcome here as believer or doubter, as joiner or loner. You are welcome here, feeling a part of us or not, full of energy or not, seeking a vision or a rest. You are welcome to join us as you are. We acknowledge that we are in the Aboriginal territories of the Salish, Nez Perce, Blackfeet, and Anishinaabe people who shared the Helena Valley as hunting grounds. The indigenous story of the Helena Valley began long before the arrival of Europeans. We honor those who walked here before us. We honor the path they have shown us in caring for this place for generations to come. We strive for justice and fair relations with their descendants. All right. I never got around to asking anybody to help light the chalice. So if I have a volunteer, that's wonderful. Yes, thank you, Catherine. Together, we gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together. In your order of service, there's an insert that's the Big Sky Unitarian Universalist Covenant, which was put together by us over 2 years' time and adopted in March of this year. And I thought it would be appropriate for us to review, to look at these, this covenant. And so what I invite you to do is to say the covenant with me or listen, whatever works best for you. We, the members of Big Sky Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, promise to welcome all who come to us, respect diversity and accept our differences, commit to equity and justice, build trust through active listening and compassionate communication, make decisions collaboratively and democratically, approach conflict with curiosity and patience, remain in relationship, and respond to tension as an opportunity for individual and fellowship growth. Support each other with loving kindness in times of joy and need. Express gratitude for the contributions of all who serve our community. Recognize that building our beloved community requires learning and practice. I'm gonna keep a copy in my purse and probably on my desk and probably in my teaching studio, because this doesn't just apply for me in church. It applies, it's turning out to apply everywhere in my life. I encourage everyone to keep this extra piece of paper that's in your order of service and use it as works for you. All right. We're going to sing I Am the Earth. It's in your Open Your Heart songbook. It's on page 6. And stand as you are able. Page 6, I Am the Earth.
I am the earth, I am the earth's protector. May I walk on the earth as gently
Thank you. Now we have joys and concerns. Because this service is being recorded, be aware that private joys and concerns will occur later after streaming has concluded.
My name is Katie Knight. I use she, her. I just want to say that I haven't been here for over a month, and part of that is because I took 14 of my students to Costa Rica over spring break for sea turtle ecology course, and I just have to say it was fabulous. It exceeded my intentions by so much. These were kids who were ages 14 to 18, along with one of my teaching colleagues, Jeremy Sleed, and two awesome moms, including Melissa Ackerman, who's a member of our fellowship, and her two children. So I could go on and on. I won't, but I just want to say two things. One is that we had non-stop activity in science research and just interactive play. We walked in the coastal rainforest and the highland rainforest. We encountered all kinds of species, but the most phenomenal thing was caring for the mother leatherback sea turtles, some of whom are like 10 feet long, that come up in the middle of the night to lay their eggs on the beach, and we tended them. We took biometrics, and we also collected their eggs to take to the hatchery for protection. And just laying there with a dinosaur-like animal and smelling it and just touching it, it's just in the middle of the night without any lights. It's just like peak experience that impacted all of us so much, and I'm very grateful for my students and for the ecologists who led us on that experience.
I have a joy that all of you are here today with us, and my concern is that my older sister, Summer, just had her wisdom teeth pulled out, and she is literally living off Jell-O and pudding. And that's my concern. And her mouth has been hurting a lot.
I have a joy that I'm here today, and my mom isn't here because my sister's sockets and because my sister's wisdom teeth are pulled out, so she's helping her. And I have a joy that you guys are here too.
Okay, yes.
Well, I have a joy. So yesterday I attended the Interfaith Earth Day celebration. And of course, we started with the drummers, and I'm sorry, I don't know the name of the group. Magpie Drummers. And there were quite a few of us, and we're all gathered outside, and all of a sudden one of the drummers said, "Hi, would you like to drum with us?" Wow. So I did, and what a spiritual feeling it was. You really hear that drum beat deep in your heart. But now I have a respect for all drummers. We played 2 songs, and of course, I didn't do the wrist right away. And pretty soon I thought, okay, I've got it. But maybe it's because I'm old, but my wrist was sore at the end of it. But I'm so happy That's my joy.
All right. For any other joys and concerns that we left unexpressed, we lift them up. All right, we now have an offering, and Sam and Mara, would you mind helping us with the offering? Thank you. All right, thank you for your loving hands, page 25 out of our Heart Songbook.
Thank you for your loving hands, your loving heart, your loving ways. Thank you for the gifts you bring into the world each day. And if you ever doubt yourself, remember us who love you well. We know the gifts you bring into the world each day. So thank you for your loving hands, your loving heart, your loving ways. Thank you for the gifts you bring into the world each day.
Thank you. Now, leading the service today is my husband, Ken McLean. And it's about living in balance with the pale blue dot, this lovely Gaia Earth that we are part of. And we have a children's story for all ages, but it's for all ages. And I would like the children to stay right where they're at. Oh, I'm sorry. You know, yeah, reading.
This reading is from the Singing the Living Traditions hymn book. It's number 550. We will get to the story for all ages. You're going to love it. This reading is called We Belong to the Earth. It's a responsive reading. I'll do the first part, and if you would please read the italics. This we know, the earth does not belong to us. We belong to the earth. This we know. All things are connected like the blood which unites one family. All things are connected. Whatever befalls the earth befalls the sons and daughters of the earth. We did not weave the web of life. We are merely a strand in it. Whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves. It says in the Singing Living Traditions, this is attributed to Chief Noah Sealth. It's actually one of the variations of the spelling for Chief Seattle, in case you're wondering who that person is. And now we're going to have the story for all ages. This is going to be a little bit different presentation than you're used to, but I hope you enjoy. This is the book, and in a moment you're going to see a young person reading this story to all of you.
Hi, I'm E-Train. I'm celebrating picture books by reading them aloud. With all the darkness that goes on in the world, it's always important to spread a little light. That's why today I'm reading To Change a Planet by Christina Soontorn-Vaught, illustrated by Rachel Jean-Paul Bell. And I can just tell from the cover this is going to be a super sweet story. Our planet. Big, tough, dependable. Our planet has spun through eons of time. Mere moments ago, we arrived. One person, small, quiet, insignificant. But when one person and one person and one person become many, they can change a planet. One molecule of carbon dioxide, small, quiet, insignificant. But when many cars, many factories, and many cities let loose millions and billions and trillions, they trap and stifle like a too warm blanket. One notch higher on the thermometer, small, quiet, insignificant, but one notch higher can change. But one notch higher can change our seas. They're polar bears. It can change our seasons. Life. Us. One person seems small, quiet, and insignificant. But when one person and one person and one person become many, they can change a planet. Look at all these people, young and old, coming together for good. That can be us. That should be us. Our planet seems tough, but it is fragile. Our planet seems big, but it needs us. Our planet has spun through eons of time, but this moment is the one that matters most. For our planet, our only home. Let's change the world. The world is in our hands. Here is more about climate change. What is climate change? Weather refers to what is happening with the temperature, rain, and wind over the course of hours, days, or weeks. Climate tells you about the patterns in weather over longer periods of time. While weather can change by the hour, the climate on Earth has remained pretty steady for thousands of years. But in just the last 2 centuries, humans have caused average temperatures on Earth to rise about 1 degree Celsius, or 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit, enough to affect our planet's delicate ecosystems. Scientists warn that if the climate continues to warm too much and too quickly, it could have dire consequences for much of life on Earth. But there are many things we can do to take action. One of the most important ways we can make an impact on climate change at home and in our communities is to create fewer greenhouse gases. Because many of us still get most of our energy from fossil fuels. This means lowering our energy use overall by driving less, eating more plants and less meat, conserving water, and making our homes more energy efficient. Producing new things requires energy, so we can buy less new stuff and reuse and recycle our old stuff. If you want to get involved, talk to your friends, local officials, and even your parents. We can change the world. We can change a planet. This story is so beautiful. The illustrations are so pure and perfect, and the writing is amazing too. I love this story so much.
That young man may have stock in the book company. I think he's trying to sell a lot of them.
You want to sing the kids out?
Yes, let's do that. Wow, it seems like a full weekend, after the vigil yesterday. And Katie, thank you for talking about turtles right before Earth Day. Go Turtles and go Katie. Karen asked me last night what my overall theme was, what the takeaway would be for my talk. And I had a tough time with that, because what I'm going to give you is kind of a shallow dive into the very, very big world of climate change. I'm going to talk a little about how climate change works, but it's more to inspire you or provoke you to think more about the issue of climate change as we're on the cusp of Earth Day tomorrow. We're going to start with a little disturbing image and work from there. Well, I think it's disturbing. In 1947, Albert Einstein, J. Robert Oppenheimer, and the University of Chicago scientists created the doomsday clock as a universally recognized indicator of the world's vulnerability to global catastrophe caused by man-made, human-made technologies. In October 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis, a nuclear standoff between the US and the former USSR, pushed both countries to the brink of nuclear war. The doomsday clock stood at 7 minutes to midnight. News reports were scary. Many Americans were building bomb shelters. I remember nuclear bomb drills at school. In case of nuclear attack, duck and cover. Hide under your desk and cover your head. My parents had a root cellar where they stored garden produce. I envisioned living down there if the worst happened. I'm not sure my dad was aware of the doomsday clock, but he did say emphatically that no leader would be stupid enough to start a nuclear war. I still worried that my childhood might be cut short by nuclear holocaust. The nuclear standoff lasted only 13 days. The 1963 Nuclear Test Ban Treaty between the US and USSR backed that doomsday clock off to 12 minutes before midnight. After the Cuban Missile Crisis, we were all forced to live with the constant threat of nuclear Armageddon, but it drifted into the distant background of daily life. The doomsday clock was largely ignored. In recent years, however, climate change and climate disasters have become a significant influence on the annual setting of the clock. 2023 was the hottest Earth temperature year ever recorded, with massive floods, wildfires, intensifying storms, severe droughts, and dangerous heat waves. In 2024, in part because of Russian threats to use nuclear weapons against Ukraine, the clock stands now at 90 seconds to midnight. Last year, I read a climate fiction story titled The Ministry for the Future by Kim Stanley Robinson, published in 2020. Its shocking first chapter is set in the near future in India, where a crippling 103 degrees Fahrenheit heat wave is coupled with 35% humidity. The combination of heat and humidity creates a lethal wet bulb temperature that kills many thousands of people. The lone survivor, Frank May, gave a first-person account that was as graphic, sickening, and frightening as a horror novel, the stuff of nightmares. The images my imagination created along the storyline stuck with me, and I had to decide whether I wanted to keep reading this disturbing book. Subsequent chapters followed the story of Mary Murphy, head of a newly created Ministry for the Future, whose task it was to evaluate every government decision in light of how it would likely affect future generations. The story wove in and out of politics, ecology, and social behaviors. I continued reading, I should say plodding, through the rest of the book, which did have positive themes about societies dealing with climate warming with positive actions and solutions. So I can't say I didn't enjoy parts of it. I returned to the initial emotional shock and awe of the first chapter when I did a little research and discovered that the wet bulb temperature phenomenon is very real. A 2021 Canadian Broadcasting Company report says that the wet bulb temperature is essentially a metaphor for human sweat. Sweat is the body's cooling mechanism. For sweat to actually cool the body, evaporation must remove heat from the skin. When the atmosphere is fully saturated with water and the air is hot, evaporation and cooling can no longer take place. When the wet bulb temperature reaches 35 degrees centigrade, about 95 degrees Fahrenheit, it crosses the threshold at which humans can no longer lose internal body heat and cool themselves. Result? Death. The higher the concentration of carbon in the atmosphere, the more heat and water vapor in the atmosphere holds. A 2015 study concluded that depending on the extent of future global warming, parts of the world could become uninhabitable due to deadly wet bulb temperatures. So why are there not more lethal heat events now, especially in hotter regions near the Earth's equator? The answer is and you're going to love this, Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation, or AMOC. That's a mouthful. A complex system of Atlantic Ocean currents that brings warm equatorial water north and cold water south. The global conveyor belt, as it's known, shown here, circulates, this is just part of it, circulates cool subsurface water and warm surface water throughout the world. The AMOC is part of a complex system of global ocean currents which circulates water from north to south and back in a long cycle within the Atlantic Ocean. The circulation takes heat away from the equatorial latitudes and also carries nutrients necessary to sustain ocean life. Warm water flowing north near the surface cools, forms sea ice, and leaves behind large amounts of salt in the ocean water, which sinks and is carried southward again. Could the AMOC ever stop, like depicted in the science fiction film The Day After Tomorrow? How many of you have seen that film? It is science fiction with a little fact thrown in. Greenland's ice cap is melting at an accelerating rate, dumping vast quantities of fresh water into the North Atlantic. Too much fresh water could stall that circulation, reducing the flow of warm air to northern latitudes, which would cool dramatically, harming agriculture and stifling human activities. Warm air at the equatorial latitudes would become hotter, resulting in many regions becoming uninhabitable. Runaway melting of ice caps and glaciers worldwide means eventual loss of freshwater rivers and rising seas that would flood coastal areas where several billion humans currently live. On perhaps a lighter note, the Canadian Broadcasting Company report suggested that Western Canada, where dangerous wet bulb temperatures are rare, could perhaps become a safe haven for climate refugees. Montana's relatively dry air and climate could someday make us a destination for climate refugees. Wouldn't that be a political sticky wicket for the border security crowd? This brief, shallow dive into the complexity of just one of many Earth systems affected by climate change demonstrates how many unintended and sometimes unpredictable consequences may result from unabated global warming. Here are some climate change facts cited by a volcanologist, Bill McGuire, in his 2022 book, Hothouse Earth. A 2021 Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report concluded that carbon dioxide already released by human activities will cause inevitable and irreversible major climate changes on the scale of a human lifetime. Though ice ages and warm periods have occurred for millions of years, involving perhaps variations in solar output or the Earth's tilt and orbit, it's always been the level of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, particularly carbon dioxide, that has determined whether our climate is warm or cold. 15 million years ago, atmospheric CO2 levels were comparable to today, but global temperatures were 2 to 4 degrees centigrade warmer. Back then, sea levels were 20 meters, about 60 feet higher than today. Major heat waves will be up to 7 times more likely in the next 30 years, and up to 21 times more likely from the middle of this century to the end and onwards. A recent study forecast that by 2100, crop damage arising from extreme weather is set to increase as much as tenfold. The Institute for Economics and Peace predicts that 1.2 billion people could be displaced by 2060 as a result of climate breakdown. By 2070, fully a fifth of the Earth's land area may be effectively uninhabitable. Healthy soils store twice as much carbon as the atmosphere. Unfortunately, intensive farming and widespread application of pesticides and herbicides renders soils sterile without regular fixes of artificial fertilizers. Himalayan ice fields supply the Indus, Ganges, Mekong, Yangtze, and Yellow rivers, which together supply water to irrigate crops that feed 2 billion people. 15% of that ice has already disappeared since the mid-1970s. In the film Tomorrowland, the main characters time travel decades into the future, where they discover that a Governor Nix has been broadcasting into the minds of humans in the past images of an apocalyptic future that will happen if humanity does not change its climate-wrecking behaviors. He discovers that humans of the past are not changing their behaviors, even when shown images of a catastrophic future. Why do they not change? Listen to his explanation.
Let's imagine. If you glimpsed the future and were frightened by what you saw, what would you do with that information? You would go to who? Politicians? Captains of industry? And how would you convince them? With data? Facts? Good luck. The only facts they won't challenge are the ones that keep the wheels greased and the dollars rolling in. But what if there was a way of skipping the middleman and putting the critical news directly into everyone's head? The probability of widespread annihilation kept going up. The only way to stop it was to show it, to scare people straight. Because what reasonable human being wouldn't be galvanized by the potential destruction of everything they've ever known or loved? To save civilization, I would show its collapse. But how do you think this vision was received? How do you think people responded to the prospect of imminent doom? They gobbled it up like a chocolate eclair. They didn't fear their demise. They repackaged it. It can be enjoyed as video games, as TV shows, books, movies. The entire world wholeheartedly embraced the apocalypse and sprinted towards it with gleeful abandon. Meanwhile, your Earth was crumbling all around you. You've got simultaneous epidemics of obesity and starvation. Explain that one. Bees and butterflies start to disappear. The glaciers melt. Algae blooms all around you. The coal mine canaries are dropping dead, and you won't take the hint. In every moment, there is the possibility of a better future, but you people won't believe it. And because you won't believe it, you won't do what is necessary to make it a reality. So you dwell on this terrible future. You resign yourselves to it. For one reason, because that future doesn't ask anything of you today.
Think about that.
Let's imagine.
Because that future doesn't ask anything of you today. It's what we might say is kicking the can down the road. You're probably familiar with the term climate grief. Here's a part of the Wikipedia definition. Ecological grief, in particular climate grief, refers to the sense of loss that arises from experiencing or learning about environmental destruction or climate change. You're probably also familiar with psychologist Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief, which she developed in 1969 to describe the emotional process of those dealing with death, dying, and loss of a person. 2 or more were added over the years to strengthen the model. Here is Kubler-Ross's modified model, the 7 stages of grief. And I'll read those for you because it might be a little hard to see from the back of the room. It starts in the revised model with shock, initial paralysis at hearing the bad news, then denial, trying to avoid the inevitable, then anger, frustrated outpouring of bottled up emotion, then bargaining, seeking in vain for a way out, then depression, final realization of the inevitable, then another new one, testing, seeking realistic solutions, and then acceptance, finally finding the way forward. This expanded model can easily fit climate grief. However, unlike the death or loss of a person, climate change losses are diverse and persistent, often with no discernible end in sight. We can only gain some psychological distance from them by temporarily ignoring them. But every day we awaken. The degrading environment is still with us. There is no simple off-ramp, no exit from the path civilization has created toward its own demise through excessive fossil fuel use and unsustainable depletion of the Earth's finite resources. The most recent episode of a new PBS television series, A Brief History of the Future, which I highly recommend. If you don't have PBS, it's also on Amazon Prime, focused on the power of stories in communicating about climate change. I want to say that again. It focused on the power of stories in communicating about climate change. Program host Ari Wallach said, "In order to create the world we want to live in and leave behind, we can and must begin telling ourselves a new story about the future, one defined by creativity and possibility rather than fear, sacrifice, and loss." Another program presenter said, "The problem with fear is that it prohibits transformative action." The program also featured an interview with Katharine Hayhoe, author of the 2021 book, Saving Us. She said, "The story we're missing is that of a better future. Climate change stands between us and a better future. It's not just about avoiding the apocalypse. It's about impending changes that will give us that safe world we all want." In her book, she suggests that facts alone are not enough to convince climate deniers of the reality of climate change. You must find common ground on other things first, and sharing each other's personal stories are an effective way to begin that dialogue. Here are some important things I do not have time to talk about on this topic today. How climate change disproportionately impacts economically disadvantaged, racial and ethnic minorities, indigenous and other vulnerable populations. How our American profit-driven, consumer-driven, growth-driven economy is unsustainable. One statistic I saw states that our American lifestyle exhausts the annual capacity of the Earth's resources by mid-July. The many organizations that are focusing on new sustainable resources and technologies that offer positive paths to a better future. I'd love to have a lot more time to talk about that. The long and growing list of positive books, websites, blogs, etc. Just a few examples. TheCoolDown.com, EcoWatch.com, 350.org, which has been around a while, and one you may not be familiar with called Becoming Minimalist, created by Joshua Becker to help us adjust in a different way to our incessant need to consume and accumulate. Perhaps we can visit about these important issues and resources another time. Now if you'll go back to our pale blue dot, Karen. This is the source of my title of the topic for today. I'll end with this image, appropriately titled by astronomer Carl Sagan, the pale blue dot. The photo was taken by the Voyager 1 space probe from a distance of 3.7 billion miles from Earth. Sagan said this about the photo: "Look again at that dot. That's here. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. The aggregate of our joy and suffering, thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there, on a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam." Thank you for listening. And now we'll have a minute of silent meditation. And now I'll ask Karen to pass the microphone if anyone has any reflections this morning they'd like to share.
Hi. I'm going to have to shorten this because it could take the rest of the day, but essentially amounts to Gail and I have more or less settled for our age and the conditions of our life and where we've been. And we've gone back to the Victory Garden. And it's kind of the story of what can we do? And we know that 85% of our food or more comes from outside of Helena. We know that there's tremendous waste, over 40% of that food out of the back ends at night of our mega stores. And we know that we can conserve a tremendous amount of our own food product with our little Victory Garden. And over the last 4 or 5 years, our landlord has been so impressed with the front lot. We have a huge front lot, which is a little bit of luck, and we have an unlimited water supply, which isn't in the, don't tell anybody. It is not in the main anyway. So, my grandmother, I was born in 1942. My grandmother, in the middle of the war in the middle of the city of Milwaukee. My grandfather was a railroad engineer, and my grandmother had a garden, and the kids from the Catholic school came to her back door, and she supplied dinners for a lot of people. And I remember how she had a fantastic compost set up in the 1940s. Of course, I was only 3 to 5 years old, but vaguely I've gone back to it and remembering that. So the moral is that I think in a positive way, whether it's a sewing club or gathering or whatever anyone picks, I think to do something that's really formal enough to get people other than one person involved is a move in the right direction. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. Karen, behind you.
Hello, my name is Greg Worcester. My pronouns are he, him. I think it's important to note that resistance to climate action has changed in recent years. It's gone a lot from denial. It seemed to have skipped a few steps in the Kubler-Ross model, and it's gone straight to depression. It's gone from denialism to doomerism. A good example of that is the case that the Montana youths brought against the state of Montana for violating their right to a healthful environment. And a lot of the expectation in defending that case is that Austin Knudsen, the Attorney General, would present a case denying either that climate change exists or denying that humans contribute to it. But the case that he actually made was look at all these other more populated areas, China, India, New York City, Los Angeles, that create much more climate change issues than Montana ever could. So Montana's not the one violating your right to a healthful environment, it's the rest of the world. So it was kind of based on, well, what can we do about it? There's nothing to be done. And so a lot of people have moved past denying that climate change exists, or even denying that humans cause it, although there is still a strong current of that in the denialism. A lot have moved to doomerism. What can we do about it? We're resigned to this happening. It's such a big problem. What can any one state, one municipality, one country do when there's all these other countries? So keep that in mind when you're taking climate action to try to reverse the damage that's being done.
Thank you, Greg. Oh, Katie up here.
I like the concept of beginning right where you are, and working out. It's a concept from Mother Teresa. And I think it can work for the environment as well as for people in healing. As a yoga therapist in the bio-enviro, psychosocial philosophical model of care, for longevity is a biologically proficient physical body that is sustained by natural whole plant foods, and gardening is like the #1 worldwide activity that is helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Katie. And she didn't say, but it's kind of between the lines. Eating less meat helps.
Thank you, Ken. I have to say I'm inspired by Do Something Today. And today I'm giving up my dryer, which I have been wanting to do for a long time because I know it's not good for the environment. And I just think if every one of us can do something small today, it will help.
Yeah, can I say amen, even in a Unitarian service?
It's wonderful to hear all these great stories, and I go back, a lot of years, and it parallels what we did with energy. And I worked with the idea with the concept of one person makes a difference. I worked with the concept of all the things that you're talking, or some of the things that you're talking about. And, you know, a drop in the bucket, and a drop in the bucket, and a drop in the bucket. But there's another part of this. I think that it's very, very important to consider is that the things that made difference with energy in my 50 years of work was codes, changing the structure so that people had to make changes. So I believe in all we're doing today, or talking about, I'm not taking away from any of that, but I also encourage that we support, you know, structural aspects that will ensure that we continue to move forward in, you know, saving energy, world peace, all of these, and it isn't limited just to what we're doing here. Although it's a wonderful, and I totally subscribe to it, but as I look over my 50 years, codes are what made the difference for me in working with energy, which parallels this. And thank you for all the wonderful things you're saying, and it's a privilege to be here.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, probably voting for people that are on the right page is one step where we can reach a lot of people and make change.
I have to tell you, you know, I've been reading a ton of books in the last 6 weeks, and Karen reminded me, I don't have 5 days to do this. I don't have all day to do it. You know, I got to distill down to some important elements. But I can tell you that there are many very exciting and positive things happening. You know, I'm giving you the more the worst case side because, you know, negative sells, right? But there are so many things out there. Groups like that cooldown.com, excellent, excellent resource. I get their little newsletters and blogs in my inbox, and every time it's something that just makes you want to go, yeah, we can do this. Solar technology is growing by leaps and bounds, both in reducing cost and improving efficiency. So I'm far from a pessimist now. In fact, you know, even reading all the negative, I still am optimistic about the future, in part because there are a lot of exciting young people involved. There's a whole book by Nick Engelfried called Movement Makers that I would also recommend to you. It's really encouraging.
Time to sing.
And the singing will be in the Open Your Heart songbook. It's number 38, the Serenity Prayer.
48.
48, yes, sorry.
Yeah, stand as you are able.
cannot change. And the courage, the courage, the courage, courage, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom, the wisdom, the wisdom, the wisdom, the wisdom to know the difference. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, and the courage, the courage, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom, the wisdom, the wisdom, the wisdom, the wisdom to know the difference.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts till we are together again. Are there any announcements? Oh, hang on. I have one announcement. Today, is it 2 o'clock that the AA group is in there? 1:30? Okay, yeah. Elaine scheduled an AA group to be in the fireside room at 1:30 today. Change, coffee, treats, etc. We need to be wrapped up and cleaned up and out of there by probably 20 minutes after 1. A little heads up there. Okay, other announcements.
On May 5th, you're all invited to the service. It'll be on spirituality and the way that the Unitarian Universalists 7 principles protect, which will be specific to the bio-enviro-psychosocial philosophical model, philosophically and or theologically happy, blissful spirit.
Yes, Cass.
It's Sandwich Ministry Week. Wednesday morning, peanut butter and jelly, 9:30 in the morning in the Plymouth kitchen. Everybody who likes that to help people on the street get a sandwich is invited to come help us make them.
Other announcements? All right. Then it's time to